The soft hum of the air conditioning in my office was a stark contrast to the tempest of thoughts swirling in my mind. I'm Anna, a 28-year-old lawyer, and my life now is a far cry from the chaos of my childhood, a past I've kept locked away, even from those closest to me. The tranquility of my office was abruptly shattered by the ringing of my phone. An unknown number flashed on the display, yet something about it felt ominously familiar. With a reluctant sigh, I answered, my voice a blend of professionalism and caution. Anna, it's your father, came the voice, trembling with a nervousness that only heightened my growing unease. A chill ran through me. It had been over a decade since I last heard that voice. A voice that once represented safety and love, but had become a symbol of betrayal and pain. Why are you calling me? I asked, my tone sharp and cutting through the silence that followed his introduction. I'm in trouble, Anna. Financially. I need your help, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Despite the sincerity of his plea, it ignited a spark of resentment within me. My help now? After all these years? I retorted, disbelief and anger intermingling in my tone. Yes, I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious. I'm really in a bind, he continued, desperation seeping into his voice. You stopped being my father a long time ago. You can't just call me now and expect me to help, I replied, my voice cold and unwavering. There was a pause on the line, a heavy silence that felt like an unbridgeable chasm. Anna, please, I'm still your dad, he said, a feeble attempt to rekindle a bond long extinguished. The word dad felt foreign, almost jarring. A dad? You forfeited that title when you chose her over me, I said it with years of suppressed anger and hurt pouring into my words. You're my daughter, he began. I thought wrong, I interrupted, cutting him off mid-sentence. You made your choice years ago, and now I've made mine. His voice was a mix of pleading and despair. Anna, I am sorry. I just need this one favor. The word sorry echoed in my office, a hollow and meaningless sound. Sorry doesn't change the past. I can't help you, I stated firmly and hung up. Before the age of 10, my childhood was filled with love and laughter, a testament to the wonderful life my parents and I shared in our small rented house. My mother was a beacon of joy and kindness, filling our days with warmth and our nights with stories and dreams. My father, once a playful and caring man, would spend evenings playing games with me or teaching me little things about the world. Our home was a cocoon of happiness, where every day was an adventure and every night a sweet dream. But our blissful life came to an abrupt halt with my mother's untimely death. The house that once echoed with laughter and love turned into a silent mausoleum of memories. I remember walking through the rooms, each corner a stark reminder of her absence. The loss was unbearable, not just for me, but for my father too, who had lost the love of his life. Yet his grief seemed to diminish quickly, to my confusion and dismay. Within a few months he brought home Marissa, a woman who was to play a significant role in our lives. I recall the day he introduced her, a day that marked the end of my cherished childhood. Anna, this is Marissa. She's going to be staying with us, my father announced one evening, his voice devoid of the warmth I was so accustomed to. I looked up at her, hoping to find a hint of motherly warmth or friendliness, but found none. Her presence was imposing, her gaze cold and calculating from the very first moment. I sensed an unsettling shift in the atmosphere, a change that filled me with an inexplicable sense of dread. Hello, Anna, Marissa said, her voice smooth yet lacking any real warmth. Her smile, rather than being reassuring, seemed to mask something sinister lurking beneath its surface. In the days that followed, the house felt different, as if the walls themselves were recoiling from her presence. The cheerful memories of the past began to fade, replaced by a pervasive unease that settled into every corner. I found myself scrutinizing Marissa, searching for any redeeming or kind quality, but each of her looks and gestures seemed laced with unspoken animosity. It was clear she wasn't here to fill the void left by my mother, but to craft a new narrative, one in which I felt like an unwelcome intruder. Watching her navigate our home, a place that once felt safe and happy, I couldn't shake the feeling that her arrival marked the start of something ominous. The way she looked at me with eyes that seemed to conceal more than they revealed did not bode well for the future. The days following Marissa's arrival felt like a relentless nightmare from which I couldn't awaken. The house, once alive with my mother's laughter and love, now felt cold and uninviting. Marissa's presence cast a shadow over everything. turning even the simplest daily routines into struggles. One morning, as I sat down for breakfast, I noticed my food tasted unusually salty. Marissa, did you put too much salt in this? I asked, my voice hesitant. Oh, did I? It must have been a mistake. Just eat it, Anna. Don't be so picky, she replied, her tone dismissive and almost mocking. The incidents grew more frequent and spiteful. I remember finding my clothes ruined after doing the laundry. Marissa, my clothes are all faded. What happened? I asked one day, holding up my once favorite dress now discolored and unwearable. She glanced at it and shrugged nonchalantly. Maybe the washing machine is acting up. Or perhaps it's time you stopped wearing such childish clothes. I felt a surge of frustration, but I knew arguing would only make things worse. Feeling helpless, I turned to my father, hoping he would see through Marissa's facade. Dad, Marissa is ruining my things. She's always so mean to me, I said one evening, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. My father's reaction, however, was far from what I had hoped. Anna, you're imagining things, my father said sternly, his words cutting deep. Marissa is doing her best to fit into our family. Stop causing trouble. But Dad, it's the truth. I protested, but he wouldn't listen. That's enough, Anna. I don't want to hear any more of your accusations, he replied, his voice rising in anger. Each day became a struggle as I tried to navigate Marissa's hostility and my father's indifference. The home that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. I began spending more time in my room trying to escape the constant tension that seemed to hang in the air. Living in that house of horrors, I felt alone and misunderstood. The safety and happiness that once filled those walls were replaced by fear and anxiety. Every day, I longed for the past, for the times when my mother's smile was enough to light up the entire room, a stark contrast to the darkness that now lingered in every corner. Living with Marissa became a daily ordeal of evasion and endurance. Her hostility toward me escalated from verbal jabs to physical abuse. It started subtly, with pinches on my arm or twists on my stomach, always in places easily concealed under my clothes. The pain was sharp, a cruel reminder of my helplessness in her presence. I developed strategies to avoid her, staying constantly alert to her whereabouts in the house. I would take long routes to my room or wait until Marissa was occupied before moving around the house. Despite my best efforts, there were times when she caught me off guard, and those moments always ended in some form of pain. One day, while I was quietly reading in the living room, Marissa walked in and, for no apparent reason, pinched my arm hard, her nails digging into my skin. I winced but stifled any cry of protest. She looked at me with a cold, triumphant smirk before walking away. During one of Grandma's rare visits, she noticed my cautious movements and the way I flinched whenever Marissa's voice echoed through the house. Anna, is everything all right at home? Grandma asked, her voice filled with concern. I looked at her, my heart itching to tell her the truth, but fear and a desire to protect her from worry held me back. Yes, Grandma, everything's fine. Just a lot of schoolwork, I lied, offering her a forced smile. She seemed unsure but didn't press further. I felt a pang of guilt for deceiving her, but I couldn't bear to cause her any distress. That evening, as Grandma was leaving, I saw Marissa watching from the window, her expression one of satisfaction. It was as if she took pleasure in knowing she had control over me, that she could hurt me and get away with it. Her triumphant look clearly signaled that she was in power, and I was merely a helpless pawn in her twisted game. I retreated to my room, feeling trapped in a cycle of abuse and silence. The physical pain from Marissa's pinches and twists was bearable compared to the emotional turmoil I felt. School was my sanctuary, a place where I could briefly escape the misery of home life. However, even there, the shadows of my struggles began to seep through. One day, as I handed in my homework, Mrs. Thompson, my kind-hearted teacher, gently grabbed my wrist, her eyes drawn to the bruises on my arm. Anna, what happened here? These look like bruises, she said, her voice filled with concern. I quickly pulled my arm back, covering the bruises with my sleeve. It's nothing, Mrs. Thompson. I fell while playing, I lied, avoiding her gaze. Mrs. Thompson didn't look convinced. Anna, if there's something wrong or if someone is hurting you, you can tell me. It's important to speak out, she urged, her eyes searching mine for the truth. I wanted to confide in her, to reveal everything about Marissa and the constant fear I lived in, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I forced a smile. Really, Mrs. Thompson, I'm fine. It was just a silly accident. She gave me a long, thoughtful look before nodding slowly. All right, Anna, but remember, my door is always open. You're not alone, she said, offering me a reassuring smile. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. Mrs. Thompson's kindness made it even harder to maintain the facade that everything was okay. As I walked home that day, her words echoed in my mind. I felt a mix of gratitude for her concern and a deep sense of loneliness from carrying my burdens alone. The thought of revealing the truth about my life at home was terrifying. I feared what Marissa might do if she found out I had told someone. That night at dinner, I was quiet, lost in thought about Mrs. Thompson's offer to help. Marissa noticed my silence. Why so quiet tonight, Anna? Cat got your tongue? She asked in a mocking tone. I just shook my head and continued eating, trying to make myself as small and unnoticeable as possible. After dinner, as I lay in bed, the reality of my situation felt more overwhelming than ever. Mrs. Thompson's concern had shown me that people did care, yet the fear of what revealing the truth might bring kept me silent. I was caught between the desperation to confide in someone and the fear of Marissa's retaliation, a precarious balance I navigated every day. The day Mrs. Thompson decided to involve my father was filled with anxiety and dread. I sat nervously in the principal's office, fidgeting as I waited for him to arrive. When he finally walked in, his face was stern, his eyes betraying a mix of irritation and embarrassment. "What's this about, Anna? Why am I being called to your school like this?" he demanded, his voice sharp. I glanced at Mrs. Thompson, hoping for some semblance of support. Swallowing hard, I tried to find my voice. "Dad, Mrs. Thompson saw the bruises." I stammered, feeling the weight of his gaze on me. Before I could explain further, he interrupted, his anger palpable. "Bruises? What are you talking about? Are you making up stories again?" Mrs. Thompson stepped in, her tone firm yet calm. "Mr. Smith, I'm concerned about Anna's well-being. The bruises on her arm don't seem accidental. We need to address this." My father's face darkened with fury. "She's perfectly safe at home. Anna, are you spreading lies about our family?" He turned toward me, disappointment clear in his eyes. The tears I had been holding back began to spill. "It's not lies, Dad. Marissa, she's been hurting me," I managed to choke out, the truth finally surfacing. His reaction was one of complete disbelief. "Marissa? That's ridiculous. She's been nothing but kind to you. I won't have you slandering her with these accusations." "But Dad, it's the truth," I cried out, desperate for him to believe me. He stood up abruptly, his patience worn thin. "Enough of this. Tell Mrs. Thompson you made it all up," he ordered, his voice cold. I turned to Mrs. Thompson and with a heavy heart repeated his words. She gave me a nod but remained silent. Upon arriving home, my father didn't speak another word. He locked me in my room. Through the door, I could hear Marissa's voice dripping with false concern. "I told you she's just seeking attention," she said. Sitting on my bed, I felt a profound sense of isolation and despair. The one person I thought I could always count on had turned his back on me. The walls of my room, which had once felt like a personal haven, now felt like the walls of a prison. I lay there thinking about everything that had happened. The physical pain of Marissa's abuse was nothing compared to the emotional torment of being disbelieved and punished by my own father. It was a harsh realization that the person who was supposed to protect and love me unconditionally was now the source of my deepest pain. The days following my confinement were among the darkest I had ever known. I had never felt so trapped and utterly alone. Realizing my only hope was my grandmother, I found a glimmer of courage. She had always been kind and loving, but I had never dared to burden her with my troubles at home. One evening, when I was sure Marissa and my father were occupied, I mustered the courage to call her. My hands shook as I dialed her number. "Hello." Her familiar, warm voice came through the phone. "Rayma, it's me, Anna," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Anna, my dear, how are you?" she asked, her tone filled with genuine concern. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Rayma, I need help. Can I come and stay with you for a while?" I asked, the words tumbling out in a rush. "It's Marissa, she's been hurting me, and Dad won't believe me. I don't know what to do." There was a moment of silence on the other end before her voice, full of resolve, responded. "Of course, my dear. You come right over. I'll take care of this." The next day, my grandmother arrived. Though she was small in stature, her presence was commanding. She confronted my father with a strength that surprised me. "John, I'm taking Anna with me. She's not safe here," she declared firmly. My father, taken aback, tried to protest. "Mom, you can't just take her. She's my daughter." Your daughter, whom you failed to protect, she countered sharply. I won't stand by and watch her suffer. Marissa tried to intervene, her voice dripping with deceit. She's just a child making up stories. You can't believe her over us. Grandma turned to Marissa, her gaze steely. I know a scared child when I see one. Anna is coming with me, and if you try to stop me, I'll take this matter to the authorities. Realizing he was defeated, my father offered no further resistance. As I gathered my things, I saw Marissa's expression shift from defiant to defeated. Leaving the house with my grandmother, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt safe. The car ride to Grandma's was quiet, but her presence was comforting. Once we arrived, she turned to me and said, You're safe now, Anna. You don't have to worry anymore. In my grandmother's house, I found the love and security that had been missing from my life. It was a haven where I could heal and regain my strength. The contrast between her nurturing home and the coldness of my father's house was stark. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was truly at peace. I could finally breathe again, free from the fear and anxiety that had plagued me. Years had passed since I left my father's house to live with my grandmother. Her home had been a sanctuary, a place of healing and love. But as time marched on, it brought with it a new wave of change. My beloved grandmother passed away, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. At her funeral, my father and Marissa made an appearance, their faces a mix of feigned sorrow and poorly concealed eagerness. It was clear they were more interested in what they might gain from her passing than in genuinely mourning her loss. After the funeral, as we gathered at my grandmother's house, Marissa wasted no time. Well, Anna, I suppose you'll be finding a new place to live now. This house and everything in it belongs to your father now, she said, her voice laced with barely concealed glee. My father nodded in agreement, his eyes scanning the room as if already planning what to do with the house. I couldn't help but smile, a reaction that seemed to confuse them. Actually, that's where you're wrong, I said, my voice steady and confident, taking them by surprise. What do you mean? My father asked, his expression shifting to confusion. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Grandma left a will. She bequeathed the house and a substantial amount of money to me, I explained, watching their faces change from confusion to shock. But you're just a child. I should be in charge of any inheritance you receive, my father stammered, his sense of entitlement clear. Marissa chimed in, her voice shrill. Yes, until you come of age, your father will manage your property. I relished their reactions, finding the situation almost amusing. You don't give a damn about me. You didn't even wish me a happy birthday. I turned 18 a month ago. I'm legally an adult now and make my own decisions, I stated firmly, savoring the dawning realization on their faces. My father's expression shifted from shock to anger, then to a desperate pleading. Anna, you can't do this. We're your family. I looked at them, memories of my childhood flooding back. You stopped being my family a long time ago, I said, my voice steady. Marissa stepped forward, her tone now begging. At least let us stay in the house. We have nowhere else to go. We haven't extended the lease of our house. I shook my head. This is my house now. You'll need to find somewhere else. As they left, the weight of years of pain and neglect seemed to lift from my shoulders. I stood in the house that was now mine, a house filled with memories of my grandmother's love, and felt a profound sense of closure. The echoes of the past still stirred within me, and as I sat there with the phone in hand, I felt a tumult of emotions, anger, betrayal, and a deep sense of injustice. Yet amidst it all, there was also a sense of strength, a reminder of the resilience that had carried me through the darkest of times.